William and Charlotte were feeding ducks in a San Diego city park when they were halted by a young girl. When Charlotte noticed the deformity on the girl's hand, they made the most incredible discovery of their lives. William Watkins, 32, considered himself a talented businessman. He believed that his success was the result of a combination of hard work and sound business judgment. He was the type of man who would get up early, drink his coffee, and work on his business until the day was done. And he had a keen sense of profitable opportunities. But not everything is perfect. Despite his impressive business success, the young man was dissatisfied with his personal life. He had been married to Laura for 5 years, and despite their best efforts, they were unable to have a child. William was becoming increasingly frustrated and depressed because he was over 30 and still hadn't had his first child. He had been very patient up to that point, but he couldn't understand why Laura refused to have a fertility test at a clinic. So one day, he awoke early, drank his coffee quickly, and when he left the house, he did not go to work as he usually did. In fact, William's car drove away from the office in the opposite direction. He'd worked up the courage to go to the clinic himself and get tests that would help him understand why he was unable to have family and what steps the couple could take. If he was the problem, William had already considered adoption as a solution. However, if he had no impediment, he would have to persuade Laura to undergo fertility treatments. After he arrives at the clinic and completed all of the paperwork, the clinic's doctor summoned him for a private talk. William assumed it would be a routine step in the exams, but he quickly realized that this was not the case. William sat down and listened as the doctor inquired about his relationship with his wife Laura. Then he asked if they wanted to have a child. Yes, the young businessman replied, and that was why he was there. The doctor then asked him to remain calm and place some papers on the table. He explained carefully that Laura had already had 2 abortions at that clinic. When William heard this, he became dizzy and almost threw up on the floor. He'd been waiting for a child for so long, and his wife was going to great lengths to keep it from happening. He canceled the test he was supposed to take and did not even request a refund. He dashed home to clear up the whole story with his wife. Laura was surprised to see her husband so soon after she arrived home. He didn't usually return until the day's work was done, but this was no ordinary day. William was agitated and pushed his wife up against a wall. Laura's expression changed completely when he told her that he was aware of her 2 visits to the fertility clinic and what she had gone to do. If she had looked shocked before, she was now looking at him fiercely, ready for a fight. Laura responded with all the conviction she can muster, saying that if it had been up to her husband, she would have become an obese housewife with a bunch of kids tugging on her dresses and pants all day, a woman with no time for herself. She knew that though William desired children, he would not care for them. After all, he was gone for more than 8 hours a day and always came home exhausted. William snorted with rage, but couldn't think of anything to say. He left Laura's side and went to his home study. The news of the 2 abortions was the final straw. He was still hot-headed and stunned by the morning's revelations, but looking back on the relationship, it appeared that Laura didn't care much about family life. William had noticed that she enjoyed going to the beauty salon, dining out, visiting trendy places, and traveling without a care in the world at least once a year. He gradually calmed down and dismissed these thoughts. He expected Laura to knock on his office door at any moment, but the hours passed and his wife never came to ask him if he wanted to have lunch with her. He was perplexed that after 5 years together, things had come to this. When Laura finally knocked on the door, William breathed a sigh of relief. When he opened it, he expected a hug and an apology, but Laura had a suitcase on the floor. She was only there to say that things had come to an end between them. She'd file for divorce, and they'd be free of that nightmare for good. Laura walked out of the front door, started her car, and drove away. William was alone for the first time in a long time. Seeing himself in this situation, he couldn't help but think that marrying her 5 years ago had been a mistake, and his thoughts kept returning to Charlotte, a love from his past with whom he was in love and might have married. William and Charlotte met in their first year of business school. When they graduated, they went on to live separate lives on opposite sides of the country. William accepted a position at a bank in San Diego, California that was ideal for a recent graduate. Charlotte, on the other hand, chose to remain in Florida, her hometown. He met Laura in San Diego, a woman who saw how dedicated he was, how much he could grow in his profession, and how much he could provide a comfortable life for her. But he was now lost in his thoughts and fantasies. He wondered what Charlotte was currently doing. Had she married? Does she have children? How many kids are there? He kept thinking about his college ex-girlfriend and the impending divorce. After all this abortion business, he was certain that things would never be the same with his wife. Laura would surely find another man soon. After all, she was a young, fit, and lovely woman. It would take a long time for William to recover from that blow, but there was no getting around it. It was difficult not to think that he had thrown 5 years of his life away. In the weeks that followed, William spent lonely nights imagining how his life could be different. He thought about Charlotte a lot, and one of these nights, he decided to search for her on social media, and he got a surprise that seemed more like a gift from fate. His ex had been living in San Diego for 2 years. He noticed on her timeline that she only had pictures with friends and people who had to be her relatives. This gave him the confidence to send her a message asking how she was doing. The response came 20 minutes later. "It's difficult to text everything that happened to me, but if you want, we can meet." William was ecstatic, and they agreed to go for a walk the next day. He noticed that she hadn't changed much over the years, but her expression in the photo seemed more worried, as if she had been going through some trying times. She, on the other hand, greeted him with a broad smile. It didn't take her long to tell him that she had divorced her husband and was having a bad time. She never cried so hard in her life as she did the month after signing the divorce papers. She relocated to San Diego with her husband, who had been offered a good job. However, the man soon became cold and possessive, demanding complete obedience from his wife. Charlotte filed for divorce after an ugly fight broke out between them. Despite the wound this ending had left on her soul, she was no longer subject to this man's tyranny. As the conversation progressed, it was clear that the two were still attracted to each other. Charlotte became emotional while talking about her divorce. William gently approached her to wipe away a tear. He then touched her hand to comfort her. Of course, the businessman had no way of knowing that his ex, who was so frail right in front of him, wasn't telling the whole truth at the time. Charlotte still kept a terrible, painful secret. She had lost a newborn daughter 7 years before, and only a few people were aware of it. During her pregnancy, Charlotte had not experienced any setbacks involving her physical health. The sarcastic comments of her husband, who made jokes about her weight gain whenever he could, ruined her peace of mind. Even though she was carrying his child, he could never praise her. Charlotte was exhausted after 6 months of psychological pressure, wanting to give birth soon to see if her husband would leave her alone. Perhaps she wished too hard because her will was done, and Charlotte went into premature labor. The doctors ended up fighting for the mother and daughter's lives at the same time, but both survived the operation. Charlotte, exhausted, took her daughter in her arms. Her husband was with her the entire time and couldn't wait to see the little angel. However, the couple noticed that the little girl's right hand's little fingers were stuck together. Her ears were not completely open and were pressed against her skull, and she had a tiny deformity on her lower lip. The nurse told them not to worry, that things like this could happen in premature births, but that the child's deformities could quite possibly be corrected surgically. Charlotte loved the little girl and could already see her growing up and running around the house. Her husband, on the other end, had been terrified by what he saw. He didn't say anything or show any emotion, but he wasn't going to keep hoping that it was possible to fix these cosmetic flaws, and he certainly didn't want a daughter who needed to be fixed. He desired a flawless daughter, so he set his evil scheme in motion. He waited for Charlotte to fall asleep before beginning to fill out the paperwork for the child. He didn't care who she would be with, he just knew it wouldn't be with him. He paid a high price for the entire process to take place during his wife's 8 hours of sleep. He even forged her signature and bribed hospital officials in order to maintain his version of events. The man had absolutely no shame. When Charlotte awoke and inquired about her infant daughter, her husband informed her that she had died. He went on to say, "Unfortunately, the child was born with lung deformities and did not make it, even with the help of braces." Charlotte, understandably, was devastated. Much of her sadness during and after the divorce stemmed from the loss of her daughter. She simply did not tell the entire world about the story because it caused her too much pain. The marriage had only lasted 6 months, and now she was there, having coffee and dessert with her college ex-boyfriend. Throughout the conversation, William was sympathetic to Charlotte and did not press her to tell him anything or scrutinize her past. It was clear to the young businessman that they might be able to reunite again. From that point on, he showered Charlotte with the kind of care and attention she hadn't felt from a man in a long time. With each passing day, the couple spent more time together. They visited restaurants, cafes, bars, and movie theaters. They went shopping together and planned outings with other friends they had in town. They slept at each other's houses and cooked for each other on occasion. Walking around the lake and feeding bread to the ducks suddenly became interesting and enjoyable activities. There was a lot of laughter and understanding in this relationship, as if they had never stopped knowing each other. And the distance between the west and east coast of the United States has never interfered with their life together. William and Charlotte were laughing happily as they fed the feathered creatures swimming in the park's pond. William broke the bread into several pieces, trying to distribute them evenly among the ducks nearby. Someone suddenly tugged on his jacket sleeve, preventing him from tossing the remaining bread into the water. "Could you please give me a little bit of that, sir?" a high-pitched little voice asked. When William and Charlotte came to a halt to see who it was, they noticed a young girl of about 6 or 7 years old staring at them. The child was staring at the fresh bread in William's hand and pointing with her left arm. Her right hand was in her jacket pocket. William then allowed her to take as much bread as she desired. The little girl smiled gratefully back at him and began tossing the food to the ducks, laughing heartily. The little girl's name was Anna, and it seemed that none of her parents were around. Charlotte struck up a conversation with her and wanted to know why the little girl had her right hand in her coat. Was she keeping or hiding something? "It's nothing. It's just my hand. It's a little unusual. I guess they couldn't fix it when I was born. My mouth as well," she replied. Charlotte felt her heart flutter. It was quite a coincidence to meet a little girl in the park who had also been born with her daughter's deformities. She politely requested to see her little hand. Anna pulled it from her pocket and showed it to the two strangers. 3 of her fingers appeared to be stuck, squeezed together. Charlotte noticed a small deformation in the girl's ear after she pushed her hair aside. Suddenly, her blood pressure dropped and she fainted, startling Anne and William. The young man had no idea what was going on, but he requested that passers-by bring him some water. With some persistence, the businessman was able to help his girlfriend regain consciousness. Charlotte burst into tears when she awoke and saw Anna was still with them. No one knew what was going on or what had triggered this. Only after a few minutes and a long drink of water did the woman calm down enough to reveal what had happened in her past. Little Anna was still baffled, but William was completely petrified by the revelation. Charlotte had recovered enough strength to get up and go to Anna. She hugged the girl and exclaimed, "I can't believe it!" But it was true. Her daughter had found her way back to her mother. "What a world we live in. It's the world's way of making amends for past wrongs," she stated. Anna was not scared, but she was still quite confused. Could she really believe that she was the girl in the story of this woman she just met? After Anna revealed that she was an orphan from the San Diego Center for Children, a large orphanage in the city, the couple took Anna home. The story was bizarre and Charlotte had no way of proving she had been deceived, unless she could convince her ex-husband to confess what he had done. But what were the chances of the man confessing to authorities that he had abandoned a newborn baby girl at the orphanage without consulting the mother? Counting on the ex-husband's cooperation was out of the question. So, if they wanted to keep Anna, they would have to prove it with a DNA test authorized by a judge, or else start the adoption process. William anticipated a long journey and promised to do everything in his power to assist Charlotte in regaining custody of her daughter. He was able to expedite the DNA test through his contacts, which revealed that Anna had a 99.9% chance of being Charlotte's daughter, implying that she was her biological daughter. Charlotte was caught up in a whirlwind of emotions and couldn't believe the miracle she was witnessing. With the genetic issue resolved, William referred Anna's hand and ears to a plastic surgeon he knew. The doctor assured him that it was possible to make the girl perfect. Nothing would be immediate, but it would work. Charlotte, on the other hand, could not stand by and watch such heinous injustice go unpunished. She filed a lawsuit against her ex-husband, citing the DNA test as evidence. When the story broke in the media, it caused quite a stir among the people of San Diego. Charlotte's ex-husband has yet to pay for his crimes because he has fled the city and the authorities. The FBI is now investigating the case, and the couple is certain that the man will never be able to live a normal life again. He will either remain a fugitive indefinitely or pay for his crimes in jail. Charlotte, William, and Anna are now a family. 3 pieces of the same story that have come together in the most unexpected way in the universe. But the story does not end there. Anna will soon be promoted to big sister, and William will finally realize his dream of becoming a father. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, and this other video that is now appearing on the screen will most likely move you as well. Have a nice day, and see you in the next video.